afternoon, everyone. For those of you who haven't met me before, either at our reference desk or one of the tech programs that we offer here at the library, my name is Heather Lasher, and I would like to welcome you to our Veterans Day celebration here at the Kennedy Library. Today, I would like to honor and show gratitude for the veterans and the sacrifices, dedication, and courage that they have shown to serve our country. The first thing I would like to do, and the most important thing, is I would like to recognize the veterans that we have here with us today. I think I could speak for all of us in the room by saying thank you for your service, and we are truly honored to have you here. Now, if I might ask that everybody stand, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by President of the Auxiliary for the Piscataway Legion Post 261, Debbie Twist.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the national anthem, which will be performed by Debbie Check.
Please join me in singing the song of our greatest nation. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Okay. All right, our first presentation will be a demonstration on the folding of the American flag. Each fold carries its own unique symbolism representing values we hold dear. Please welcome the Piscataway American Legion Post 261 for this tribute.
Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Pagano, and I'm Veterans Affairs for American Legion Post 261. At this time, I would like to present our comrades and our fellow Legionnaires to approach and show you the demonstration. During the demonstration of the flag ceremony, it's very important that we all keep a moment of silence. We really don't speak. They do what they have to do at that particular time, and you can identify through the paperwork that we passed out exactly each step by step as they do it. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the highest respect that you can pay anyone. This is the way that you would unfold the flag, and I would like to very much thank Matt and Howard for doing this demonstration for us. And if it didn't bring tears to your eyes, it sure brought tears to mine. Everybody, God bless America. God bless our flag.
Thank you so much for that meaningful demonstration. Now, understanding the origins of this day, I think, really helps us appreciate the significance of it. It helps us reflect on the legacy of service and sacrifice that each and every one of our veterans does for our country. So please join me in welcoming the chairwoman of the Piscataway Township Cultural Arts Advisory Commission, Catherine Juttner, who will share with us the history of Veterans Day.
Yeah, good afternoon. It is so great to see so many of you here. Our veterans, if you would raise your hand or give a stand so we can see our veterans that are here. Thank you. It is wonderful to see you. Thank you for your service. And we hope that we have your picture on display with the banners. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of Veterans Day. And I was kind of researching it, and there were some little discrepancies on certain dates. But one of the impetus of Veterans Day was when an unknown soldier was laid to rest at Arlington Cemetery, which of course is the tomb of the unknown soldier. And it was 2 years after that the Veterans Day remembrances were started. And at that time, it was called Armistice Day, without an actual official name, but it wasn't official at that time. And the name did not become official yet until 1926, is when it was signed into an official act that it be called Armistice Day, so the revolution. And it was given as a recognition to the end of World War II, World War I, and those who were fighting in World War I, and in the war which ended, the significance of it was that the war ended on the treaty was signed November the 10th, 1918. So this is where the November 11th comes in, with the signing of November the 11th day of the 11th month. In 1926, Congress signed a resolution, an official resolution for the Armistice Day celebration. So it really became sort of enshrined in the different celebrations that we have. Now, several years later, in 1947, that's the first time it was called Veterans Day. The name was changed to Veterans Day. And at that time, then, Veterans Day became to include the veterans from all the wars that we had. Originally, it was just for deceased veterans from World War I, so it became all the veterans. Now, in 1949, a gentleman by the name of Raymond Weeks, and he was a World War II veteran. He started to organize a National Veterans Day with a parade and, with the different floats and all kinds of celebrations. And he started pushing for the name to be changed to Veterans Day, and in order to be celebrated each year on November the 11th. And this actually became signed into law by President Eisenhower in 1954. is when it became officially Veterans Day, and the celebrations were expanded to parades and grander celebrations than what they had been. And Mr. Weeks, in 1982, he received the Presidential Citizens Award for his efforts for that, which he very much deserved for all the efforts that he put in year after year for that, in order to just promote Veterans Day and our veterans and make sure that they are not forgotten and that we honor them in different celebrations, honoring and also celebrating them. The 1968 law now this is interesting, in 1968, there was a change from November the 11th. The National Congressional Committee changed the date of Veterans Day from November the 4th to Monday, October the 10th. And it was the fourth Monday of the month. The purpose of this was that it would fit in with the other national holidays and that there would be a 4-day weekends. So there were several 4-day weekends during the year for the country, so everybody had a 4-day weekend. And that was the purpose of it. Now, this did not sit too well with many people because it took away from the significance of the November 11th, what it was actually the purpose of that specific day was. And it was changed, then it was changed back after much back and forth to do, and it was changed back to, in 1978, Congress returned it to the original Veterans Day. Veterans Day, by the way, is also celebrated in the Allied countries, and France and the UK celebrate at the same time that we do. And they also have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, as we do, and they also celebrate on November the 11th. And on November the 11th, France has it at the L'Arc de Triomphe, is their Veterans Memorial, and then the other one was the Veterans, it was the Arc de Triomphe, and then France, and then the UK has another place where they have their unknown soldier. So they do celebrate with us, and then other countries, Australia celebrates it, New Zealand celebrates it, so many countries, the Allied countries, celebrate Veterans Day. The other thing I found out, and I don't know if any of you knew this, but there's a national movement the veterans have where they invite different communities, states, whoever, to celebrate and have a very grand Veterans Day parade. And for this, you apply for it. The organizers or would-be organizers have to apply for it. And the veterans organizations, they support it. The National Veterans Organizations support this particular effort. They provide some equipment, they provide some refreshments, they provide all kinds of things, handouts and everything, to be this grand, really grand celebration, greater than what most towns, not to diminish it, but to greater than what most towns would actually have. So there's 23 states that have this. Sadly, New Jersey is not one of them. So maybe Piscataway, you'll have to talk to the mayor about this. Maybe we want to do this in Piscataway and apply for it and do something really grand for New Jersey, and we would be the first town in New Jersey to do this, and that would be just great. And with this celebration, I want to kind of segue into the banners that we have in Piscataway, which is our way of, aside from these get-togethers and other small celebrations that we have, is our way of really honoring and celebrating our veterans. And if you do not have a photograph up of yourself, you'll have the opportunity to give us your photograph, and we'll make a banner for it. And these are done, we do like once a year, just where there's a designated day, and this year for, I think I'll do it for maybe Veterans Day, Veterans Day again. And there'll be a designated day for everyone to drop off their pictures, hopefully here at the library if we have permission to do that. And we'll meet and you'll bring your photograph in, and then we go along and process it. And then I have a wonderful gentleman who then does all the artwork of going through the photographs and putting it into the computer system and cleaning them up and just getting them ready for the company that actually prints the banners. And then I do all of the verbiage and the work on that part. But without his help, it's Chor Lee. I don't know if any of you know him. But Chor does it, and he does a fabulous job. And it's very, very time-consuming. And the only thing that he asked is that for people to please bring in clearer pictures, because he has a hard time with them. They have to be, if you're going to do a printout, if you're going to print one of your photographs, it must be on photographic paper. Regular paper is just too difficult to get it clear. So the better picture you give us, the better it will turn out. And we hope that all of you will participate in it again this year, or those of you that have not participated. And we would like to have you and just participate in it and have you up there so that we can honor you. And what we're going to do, being that we have all the banners are pretty much used, so going forward, we're going to double up on the banners, just so you know that it'll be doubled up on. And we'll have a great some great pictures and banners up for Piscataway Township. So hopefully, and if you have any questions on it anytime, please do not hesitate to call me. If you don't have my phone number, the township can give it to you. And also now you could call me on my cell phone, as opposed to just on my home phone. So we hope to hear from you and to also speak with you and just honor you and get together with you on your celebrations. And I'm so glad that you came out, so many of you came out. Now I wonder if is Sergeant Boone here? Sergeant Boone. Yeah, I asked Sergeant Boone to speak. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to have Sergeant Boone come up, please, and speak with us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about his experience, his thoughts, his feelings, what he went through, whatever he would like during his service in the Vietnam. He was in Vietnam, the Vietnam War. So Sergeant Boone, thank you so much for doing this and for speaking to our audience.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm used to reveille at 4 o'clock in the morning. So now it's football Sunday. I'm sorry to take you away from your Sundays and your praying. but I wanted to, when I was asked would I say a couple of words, I jumped at the chance because the Marine never passes up opportunities. I went into the Marine Corps at the age of 17, and I graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School in Elizabeth, New Jersey. The Marines I chose was because the Marines, when Katie was telling you about the history of Veterans Day, there's a history of the Marine Corps and the other armed forces and the integration of the Marine Force. In 1947, the president asked that all of the armed forces be integrated. And the Marine Corps fought it tooth and nail because they don't draft personnel. You have to be volunteer. What the Marines did in 1947 was say everyone must be a high school grad to be a Marine, making it a little more difficult. But it's a good thing because the more you learn, your knowledge you use later. The long and short of it all is I chose the Marine Corps because they was resisted more, and from my knowledge, they was the better of the forces during that time. And I volunteered. My family thought I was crazy when I volunteered for Vietnam and for the Marine Corps. But the fact that they had the requirement, the Marines are the smallest armed forces in the United States. We don't draft, you have to volunteer. And as I mentioned, you must be a high school grad. But at the same time, you have to pass the same exam that all of the other armed forces gives to the people. Now, the long and short of it all is my stay in Nam. When I volunteered for Vietnam, that was one of the main reasons I volunteered. In 1965, I volunteered. I graduated in 65. And I talked a couple of my school buddies into joining what they called at that time the buddy plan. We all went over, there was 8 of us. We all went to Nam and we all came back with no major injuries and no loss of limbs. Now, another reason I chose the Marine Corps is I came from a very large family, a family of 13. I was next to the youngest. In those days, they said you was next to the baby, in my family anyway. But in the long and short of it all is, none of us was ever drafted, so I felt myself that we should give something, the Boone family should give something back to the United States. This is the only country and the home that we know, so we done that. And thanks to God, we lived through it all. But one of the good things about joining the armed forces, and one of the things I did learn, my boot camp was in Paris Island, South Carolina. And it was we only have 2 boot camps in the Marine Corps. Paris Island, South Carolina, and San Diego, or Camp Pendleton in California. And you have to pass that. You go through all of the training. And one of the training is marksmanship. You have to qualify not only swimming and marksmanship. The marksmanship is 3 categories. The marksman you just barely pass as a D, and then you have the sharpshooter, and then you have the expert. I qualified as an expert. Years ago, when President Kennedy was killed, the person that was accused of killing him was a Marine marksman. A marksman, he just got a D, but it made all the headlines Marine, as he was defecated, that he could shoot someone from 3,000 miles away. The guy just passed the test. He was a marksman. But in our case, history has stated the Marines are the first to fight in any combat, and the Marines guards all of our emphases in overseas. If you was at the end of my tour of 4 years, they asked you to re-enlist if you got a good conduct and you passed during those 4 years. And if you re-enlist for the next 4 or 6 years, they'll give you your first 2 years of choice of duty. The primary duty is embassy duty. That way you go overseas and you guard all of our embassies. If you notice, when the president or the vice president leaves or enters their plane, you have a Marine standing there in their dress blues as they enter and depart. Those are the good things of Vietnam in the Marine Corps. Now, the better part of it all is during that stay, you can being in South Carolina, you go from South Carolina out to Paris Island to your base, which was Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Now you can be what they call the weekend warrior, swooping back and forth from North Carolina to New Jersey on your weekend, but that's not good. What I did and what the Corps afforded me to do was take corresponding courses during my weekend, and that was helpful. After serving in the Army and after being honorably discharged, I was able to go back to college and finish my college education, and after which, in 1978, I got married for the first time. I only had one marriage. And I used the GI Bill for my home, for my first purchase of my home. It was a two-family home. I didn't want to rent because everywhere you go, it was differently. So I bought a two-family home, single at that time, but working as a substitute teacher, that's another story. And after which, I got married, and now I have two daughters, so I have to look for a larger place. So, but the GI Bill let you do that. You pay off your old loan and get a new loan, and you get a larger place. So the Marine Corps and the military has been very fortunate with me as a Marine, and I always say, once a Marine, always a Marine. And I think any veteran that have served will say the same about their unit. Now, people, in case you don't know, you have the Army, you have the Navy, the Air Force, and you have the Coast Guard also. The Coast Guard is part of our armed forces. You only hear about it when they bust up drug raids and whatnot, but they are part of us. And I could go on talking, but I don't want to hold up your evening. But I want to say this to you also. The fact that I joined the Marine Corps enabled me to meet people such as you and others that I would not have met if I stayed in Jersey, Georgia, Arkansas, California, and even people in my travel. When you go out of country, one of the first things that we did, one of our first combat was not Vietnam. You won't read about this in your books, but it was the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic years ago, back in the 60s, was like Cuba. They had a dictatorship. We went in overnight, and we was there only to support the locals. But we was there, we went by Navy, of course, and we came back overnight. We was there to support the locals, and that was when the Dominican Republic became a republic now, and the dictator was taken down in a matter of hours. Now, you won't read about that, but if you know people in the Dominican, they will tell you it's in their history books that we went there. So we've done good things that you may not ever hear about. Some I can't talk about. But there was one thing that I really liked, and I was in, I won't say like, but I really liked the operation. The operation was Operation Union. And Union, of course, is in Elizabeth is in Union County. So that was a good operation that we had. But all in all, as mentioned earlier, I was a part-time substitute teacher when I came from Vietnam and I was discharged. My profession is really finance, but the banking world wasn't ready for a Marine at that time. In '72 it was. And my old football coach, and Thomas Jefferson, he was in charge of all of the substitute teachers, so he hired for 2 years. I was a substitute teacher. I used to tell, I would qualify to teach from kindergarten to grade 12. I told everyone in the body that I was teaching, if you don't know what you're going to do after graduating from high school, go into the armed forces. It doesn't have to be the Marine, be the Army, be any of us. But if you don't know what you're going to do and getting a job in the 70s, it was just as hard as it is now, probably, good paying jobs. Now the idea of it all is if you go into the service, you know you're going to be cared for, you're going to be given food and clothing, and you're going to travel, and if you're up to it, you can learn and get a profession out of it. And I always recommended that. Now, in closing, I hope I'm not too long. In closing, I wanted to say to all of our veterans, Navy, Army, Air Force, the Coast Guard, we're all one, and we should always stay that way. This country is a united country, not a divided. As Mr. Lincoln said, a divided house cannot stand. And I said earlier that I came from a very large family. My family called me the white sheep of the family. I was doing everything different than everybody else. But it was a good thing, and they understood, and they gave the support. And I think anything that you do as a veteran, you will always have the support of this country. And by the way, in case you don't know it, IHOP at Piscataway Monday is giving veterans a free combo meal, okay? Now, any questions, or should I just stand and let you guys go on with what you want to do? Okay, well, have you ever heard, one last question, have you ever heard of the SBA, Small Business Administration? That's a federal agency. It helps women's owned businesses get started. It helps veterans get their business started. It expands your business. If you have an existing business, it helps you get bank loans. They guarantee loans up to $7 million. But if you're starting your business, you must have 10% of what you're asking for. If you're asking for a $100,000 loan, you should have at least $10,000 to inject. It is not punishment. It's, if you don't have any money invested and the business goes under, it's simple for you to walk away. The SBA guarantee the loans at the bank. The bank must say yes first. I say that to you because that was my last occupation. I went from banking for 15 years, and then I went back to the government, the federal government in Newark, SBA, Small Business Administration. That's a federal agency. Some people say Small Business Association, but it's an administration. And we guarantee loans. I was the senior credit officer there until I retired in 2012, after 37 years with the federal government. I'm telling you, this is a good country. Accept it. Again, I say goodbye to you.
Thank you, Kitty. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Boone, and happy birthday, Marine. Because in case you guys didn't know, today is the birthday of the Marine Corps. So we're fortunate today to also have Roy Lee Simon Jarman with us. He is a veteran turned author that is local to us here in Piscataway. And he will also be talking about his military background and also reading some selections from some poetry that he wrote.
First of all, I'd like to thank Heather for inviting me, Nadine for remembering me. Got a lot of texts from her. I am Roy Lee Jarman. I'm the second of 11 children by the late George and Minnie Bell Armstrong Jarman, Sr., by way of Greenville, Mississippi, some 40 years ago. Veterans, hold your hands. God bless you. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Families of veterans, hold up your hands. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Because whether we know it or not, the family goes into the service when we go. Now, I didn't really realize that until many years later. And they were talking and they were telling me how oftentimes that they found my mother back in the corner of a bedroom crying and praying that I would come home from Vietnam safely. So they suffers too. They lingers with us. For everyone else, even though I kind of feel like I'm speaking to the choir, I want to ask of you something. I want to ask that you be kind. I want to ask that you be patient. I want to ask that you be understanding. Because once a person goes into the military, they are going to experience some situations. Now, we all going to experience different things. We're going to come out differently. We're going to have different way of dealing with things. Some things may happen right away. And there may be some things that may not take total effect until 20 or more years later, as was happened to me. Of course, I had my night sweats and my anxiety attacks and my drinking and all of those situations, wondering, head on a swivel, is somebody following me? Am I safe? And it didn't happen to me. I didn't really go into my total, how shall I say it, rock bottom situation until many years later. I left Mississippi and came here to New Jersey, worked for AT&T. I worked for them for 20 years. But in my 19 year, I had a total, I call it a breakdown. And I was diagnosed with PTSD from listening to all the different things that's happening. So this is something that I wrote as one day that I was in my office in my suit and tie and sitting there thinking, and all of a sudden, I didn't know where I was. And then when I did come to myself, this is one of the things that I wrote, and it's called, I Caught Myself Smiling. I came to myself. I was sitting there at the computer staring into oblivion. I was daydreaming, reminiscing about our first skirmish in Unkay Pass. The Vietnamese hit us hard, they hit us fast. Charlie hit us heavy that day. And on my right side was a steep mountain straight up. On the left side was straight down with briars and thickets and so forth. That's where I dove to get out of the beaten zone, because there was no other place to go. And as I was climbing my way out of the thickets and the briars and the stickers on the side of the pass from which I had dove into, I noticed that the vehicle who had American written on its side was crippled. The back wheel was damaged. The feeder was dead and the gunner on the quad 50 was bleeding, but he was still trying to fire that gun alone. And as I dragged myself up to the half-open door of the vehicle, I heard the driver groan. As he gained conscious, he yelled, said, "Hey, let's take this gal out of here. Let's get out of here." And the gunner on the top of the vehicle shouted to me, "Can you feed?" Yes, I said weakly. "Well, come on, feed her. Let's take her home." I was lying flat on my back underneath that quad 50. I could see directly up that mountainside. I was completely exposed to the enemy. There was no protection from anything falling down from that mountainside. But I never before in my life ever felt more protected or more invincible. Boy, we set that mountain ablaze. As the driver drove us out of the danger and toward the compound, the gunner was bleeding, but he mechanically pulled the butterfly triggers. I was sweating, sore, scraped, scarred, and all 4 barrels of that quad 50 was smoking, and they sizzled like red-hot frying pans. That's what I found myself thinking about in a corporate world sitting there. That's what I was reminiscing about, but what got me was, what a rush. What a great feeling. that's when I came back to myself. I had a big grin on my face. I was smiling. I was enjoying it. Oh man, what a feeling. Man, what a thrill. I caught myself smiling. I shouldn't be enjoying this kind of stuff. I shouldn't be enjoying these kinds of feelings. I shouldn't be enjoying these kinds of expectations. I can't live in this corporate world with these thoughts, these kinds of thoughts living in my head. So what do I do? What do I do? What do I do with these thoughts? Maybe I just live in my thoughts. Thank you. That's what we go through. That's why I ask you to be patient. Because because you never know what that person is going through. Be kind, be patient. Help them to join these organizations. We had, I don't know if they're still here, the American Legion back there, where they can have some comrades who can help them. I'm a member of the VFW, and I love helping my vets. I'm passionate about my veterans. I'm also a member of the DAV, and we do a lot of work at the hospitals and so forth. Love helping my vets. Some just came, and some of us are almost ready to go out. And we need people. Help them join some organization. Because we need you, and we need them. They need us. We all need each other. So I want to say to all my veterans, welcome home. And come on home and join some organization so that we can help each other. Shoulder to shoulder, we can stand. We do not have to fall if we live shoulder to shoulder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman, for that very heartfelt and touching presentation. I truly appreciate you sharing that with us. Now I would like to introduce Ruby Constantino. She is one of our own here at the Piscataway Library, and she has curated the displays on local items about veterans and military for this special week. There's display cases right outside the meeting room if you would like to take a look at these, and she will now discuss some of the things that are on display.
Hello. Oh, okay. Hi. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to our veterans for your service. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm Ruby Constantino. I work here at the library, and I do a lot with our local history collection, which, if you don't know, it's like a miniature archive. There's like a small room over there, and we have all kinds of historical items in there pertaining to Piscataway. So yearbooks, books, old documents, certificates. We even have like a personalized game of Piscataway, like Monopoly, all kinds of things in there. And of course, we also have items on veterans, because Piscataway has a rich veterans history. So yeah, and like my colleague Heather said, I made a little display exhibit outside the meeting room. So as soon as you step out of the meeting room, you look to your right, there's 2 display cases. I have a bunch of items from the local history room there, and I'm just gonna highlight some of them. So, and in the case, the Revolutionary War is represented, World War I, World War II, and Vietnam, I believe. So yeah, so one of the items is we have a list of Black servicemen compiled from the War Department collection of Revolutionary War records. So it was published by the National Archives and Records Service in 1974, and it's pretty cool to look through. There are 11 names recorded in the New Jersey section, and on the cover of the booklet is Crispus Attucks, which was the first man, a Black man, the first man to die in the Boston Massacre on March 5th, 1770. So that's really interesting. We also have on display a list of militia men from Piscataway. There's 9 men in total, and the names represented are the Dunn, Randolph, Stell, Field, and Martin families, which are prominent families in Piscataway. If you know Stelton Road, that was actually named after the Stell family, and also same for the North and South Randolphville roads. Those were named after the Randolph family. But yeah, we have so much information about those families in the history room, so if you're interested about that, or any of this, just come talk to me, because I will talk your ear off. And also we have a postcard that was written in 1917, so it's really old, which I thought was pretty interesting, but the postcards was written by a woman named Kathleen, and she wrote this postcard to Mrs. Charles S. Day, who was the wife of a prominent Piscataway townsman at the time, he owned a newspaper store in the New Market area. But I'll just read you guys what she said, and of course you can look at it after. So she said, "Dear friend and all, though a distance away, my thoughts wander both to Dunellen and New Market at times. All my friends here have enlisted to serve. Best wishes to all." This was written on May 22nd, 1917, which was a month after the U.S. entered into World War I in April 1917. So it's a really fascinating piece of history that we have here in our library. And besides like books and documents, we also have materials like items. We have medals. We have the Bronze Star Medal. We have an Air Medal. We have World War II Army Air Force wings as well. And we also have an Army Good Service or Good Conduct Medal. And all of those items I put on display, which is another really cool thing. Yeah, and then the last thing I wanted to highlight is we have, I put on display a newspaper clipping from 1976. Its title is Piscataway's Burn Park, Neighbors' Way to Remember. It talks about how that park was named after Warrant Officer Jeffrey Byrne, who was killed during the Vietnam War on February 18th, 1968. And it's a really great article, goes into everything about him, his aspirations, his goals. But it also details how the name of Lake Nelson Park at the time was changed to the Jeffrey R. Byrne Memorial Park to honor his legacy. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to talk about today. And again, if you have any questions, come and see me. If you want to make an appointment to look at the items in the book history room, let me know. And if you want to know more about the Veterans Display too, let me know. And also we have some buttons on the side for free that we want to give out to our veterans. At the top it says I served, and at the bottom it says Veterans Day 2024. So yeah, and did you have a question or?
Yes. You stated that the first Black person that died in the Revolution, what was that person's name?
That was Crispus Attucks.
Oh, you Christopher Ash?
Yes.
I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for having me.
Please take time to check out those displays outside the door, and there's also a book display in the library as well for books on veterans by veterans and based on Veterans Day. So as we wrap up this portion of our event, I'd like to remind you that we have several ongoing activities both today and throughout the week. We have refreshments available with coffee, so please stay, mingle, talk to the veterans, see what their experience was like. We also have card making stations today and also throughout the week, and we'll be collecting those at the end to send overseas and also to veterans. And then we'll also have a donation area to collect items that we have posted, also to send overseas to our veterans. Now, before we break, let's take a moment to thank all those who made today possible. Our singer, Debbie Check. If you would like to hear more, she is in the band Night Ride, who will be playing on November 22nd at Kerwin's Tavern in Middlesex. The Piscataway American Legion Post 261 for that touching tribute. Our veteran and author, Roy Jarman, Catherine Jutner, and Staff Sergeant Boone for speaking. Good Time Charlie, who has music for just about every event. If you ever need a DJ, trust me, I have seen his CD collection. It is very impressive. Ruby for putting together all of the items that are on display from our local history room, and everybody else at the Piscataway Public Library that had a part in making this possible today. And of course, thank you to all those served. Have a great day and enjoy the event.